This evening we have a wonderful program for you. I'm not going to take any more time, but I do want to acknowledge the kupuna who have helped us put this through. So they're all in the back. There's Leandra, there's Maimoon, she's not quite kupuna, but that's Summer. And younger than her is Kalia. And let's see, who is up? Where's Georgia? And Kelly? And Kapua. Yes, Kapua. She's our organizer. So those are, and Puni who gave us our grace. Thank you. These are our women. So now I'd like to turn over the program to Mauna, the other support of our program. So we have sponsors, Kamehameha Schools, who make available this wonderful facility. Kahea, who provides us both staff and some small kind of money to cover some of our costs. And the women, kupuna from my very early morning class at 6:15 in the morning, Monday through Friday. They're the women who do the work. So thank you all for coming and enjoy. Oh, okay. So what are we going to see tonight? We're going to be viewing the second half, I think, of Mauna Kea Temple Under Siege. It's a beautiful video. It's going to focus on the mountain in particular, not the front end of the video. And then through the help of Sparky Rodriguez and Mauna, we were able to get the tape of the BLNR hearing on the emergency rules, and to hear the testimony of some people who are in the audience today. And we'll also get to hear, I think, the Attorney General's statement. So those of you who didn't get to see that, it'll give you some foundation in understanding where we are today and where Professor Chang was at today. So those are the two videos that we'll be looking at. It should be a little bit more than an hour.
Mauna Kea is home to observatories operated by 11 countries.
A truly international partnership.
Every year, more than 1,000 astronomers from around the world make the trip to the summit, paying as much as $60,000 a night to look at the stars through some of the most powerful telescopes on Earth. How did Mauna Kea come to this position of prominence in the world of astronomy?
In 1968, the state issued a lease to the University of Hawaii for 65 years to use Mauna Kea to build an observatory.
By 1970, there were 3 telescopes on the mountain. By 1974, 3 more telescopes were being planned.
Oh, here's one. Mauna Kea telescopes opposed, 1975.
People in the community began to get nervous, and they were fearful that astronomy would take over the mountain.
In 1976, a Citizens Advisory Committee recommended that the number of telescopes at the summit be limited to the 6 already approved.
The advisory panel won't support telescope.
In the early 80s, the University of Hawaii created a master plan that allowed for a total of 13 telescopes on the mountain. By the late 90s, the summit of Mauna Kea became one of the most developed peaks in the world. In 1999, Princess Sayako came to Hawaii to dedicate the new $400 million National Telescope of Japan. She was greeted and received on the mountain with high ceremony by the modern-day Royal Order of Kamehameha.
When you come to the ascendant to the top, you will be at the top of the world. That is where the bones of my ancestors and the spirit and goodwill of my people reside.
Now the shutter door is open. This is our window to the universe.
After 33 years, There were 11 telescopes, a radio antenna, and the new Smithsonian sub-millimeter array, multiple radio antennas that the university counts as one telescope, thereby keeping within their limit of 13 on the mountain.
This is one telescope. This is 24 telescopes.
I feel tremendous sadness when I think of our beautiful mountain as it once was, and the industrial construction zone it is today. Gone is the spiritual serenity, the pristine and ethereal vision of the heavens.
Sometimes we tend to abuse the things we have. And so at this time of our life when we have to fly airplanes and we pass Mauna Kea and we see all the buildings up on the mountain, that's real hila to us. And so in our shame we turn away knowing that that is a heva. That is not supposed to be there.
In 1999, the university began to consider a new master plan for even more development on the mountain.
You're given the most precious place to have astronomy, and now you want more?
Has the summit of the mountain expanded in size?
Two facilities that will be expanded. One is the Keck Observatory, outriggers. And then another would be the expansion of the sub-millimeter array. A new generation large telescope here. And two conventional telescopes here.
Let this not be another Waikiki. Build one building. Let's build 15,000 more.
You need to be told that enough is enough.
We go to the mountain to ensure that the connection between the world and the spirit remains intact for the good of all. We thank you for giving us permission to come to this point. We ask you permission for us to approach you even further. At the top, at Kukahau'ula, we pray there for aloha, for peace. And from there, we send those few to take the gifts, to offer them for all of humankind, to the gods themselves at Puvikio. Everything is done with the utmost respect, tradition, custom of our people.
The problem is not astronomy. The problem is not astronomy. It's Mauna Kea. It is sacred. It has nothing to do with astronomy. It could be something else up there.
Mauna Awake is a sacred place for us. So no matter what you decide, we are going to continue in our path to protect the most sacred spot of the Pacific.
It is sacred to Native Hawaiians and it is sacred to astronomers.
Astronomers replied that the quest to understand humanity's place in our vast and mysterious cosmos is among the most sacred of pursuits.
古来より人は自分たちの上空に存在する宇宙に対して畏敬の念を抱き宇宙に向けて発する問いは必ず私たちがいる地球と私たち自身の存在をより明らかなものにしてくれるのではないかと期待しております。
And we say, okay, we can understand the search for the origin of life. But do you understand that Mauna Kea represents our origin? This is the place where our ancestral ties to creation begin.
The Polynesian people discovered this island and this very mountain, driven by the very curiosity, zeal, and spirit of adventure that inspires today's astronomers here.
And so I believe that the ancient Hawaiians and the modern astronomer share an enormous amount in common.
I'm really irritated at the fact that people that support this program is using my ancestors in saying that, you know, they use the stars for navigation. They didn't need telescopes for that.
When Hawaii's foremost modern navigator, Nainoa Thompson, voted as a member of the University Board of Regents against further development on the mountain,
I cannot adopt the plan. I cannot.
he was outvoted by the rest of the board.
Aye. The opposed say no, ayes have it, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, move on to A3, Mr. President.
I'd like to say that astronomy is a clean and non-polluting industry.
It does not pollute the air, the streams, or the oceans.
There are minimal environmental impacts.
Even though astronomy by most standards is considered a clean industry,
we're going to go into areas where we store hazardous materials.
It's not without its toxicity.
One hazardous material used in large quantities is liquid mercury.
And the other thing I was really concerned about was hearing about 30 pounds of mercury on the mountain and that there have already been 2 spills.
As far as we know, there have been no spills up there since 1995. And they were all completely cleaned up.
Other things are used up here as well. Diesel, ethylene glycol, in quite large quantities. These are not trivial things when you're talking about operating on top of an aquifer.
Another concern about the mountain environment is sewage.
So it's around 500,000 gallons.
Let's just say 500,000 gallons in a year.
The principal threat is that there has not been enough monitoring for over 30 years to determine if the human waste or hazardous materials used at the observatories have actually impacted the water.
Every day I get up in the morning and I look at Mauna Kea and I see a bag of pus up there. A bag of pus.
Those observatories hurts my eyes and burns an emptiness deep in my soul that yearns for the mountain that I remember from my younger days. You cannot blame me for hating every one of those 13 observatories.
Astronomy is something that is done by a civilization that is affluent. You don't do astronomy when you have to concern yourself with eating or clothing yourself or finding shelter and water. For many people in Hawaii, that is a reality for them.
Finding a solar system out there is not feeding our people, and we need to survive.
Hundreds of millions of dollars for observatories, for telescopes, for salaries, for all of that. How much money for rent?
Basically, 13 of the richest nations in the world pay only $1 a year to use the land and the resources that belong to the people of Hawaii.
Rent is indeed paid for the use of Mauna Kea, but the agreed upon currency is not dollars, it's observing time on the telescopes for University of Hawaii astronomers.
How many students could have been educated by the revenues generated from the rental of that place?
By far the largest undertaking.
Amassing large amounts of money has become the name of the game, as astronomy organizations compete to have the biggest and the best.
And therefore, of course, it is very important for us that we stay at the cutting edge of our science.
With major discoveries in space announced regularly in the media, the competition between observatories around the world is intense. To survive in this competitive world, astronomers say, the Mauna Kea facilities need to constantly upgrade.
The astronomers who are pushing for more telescopes are not ruthless commercial developers out to make a fast buck. They are idealists whose moral compass has been confused by their ambitious dreams of scientific discovery.
You can have anything you want, but you cannot have everything. They want everything. Everybody that worships the God of technology.
There's no question that mistakes have been made. But let's try to put them aside and work in harmony together.
How can you have balance and harmony when a lot of people in this room here know about our history? We know the land is ours. We know it was stolen.
The Hawaiian kingdom was never given to the United States government. It was taken. If something is stolen, you can never have ownership of it.
We walked up the rim of Kukahau'ula carrying the flags of our nation. These are our symbols, much like Mauna Kea is our symbol.
It's the standard of the Kingdom of Hawaii. It's the standard of independent Hawaii.
And we're doing this for our Hawaiian nation, the entire Kala Hawaii.
The kingdom still exists, always has and always will. The Royal Order of Kamehameha speaks under duress the occupation of my country and its people.
We have major problems here. Many of the countries that are involved, Brazil, Canada, UK, Taiwan, we are looking at an international incident.
And you sit up there and tell us what you are doing is good for mankind? You are putting the knife into our hearts.
The harm is immeasurable. How much louder and harder could it be said? And I seize this time to express myself. It's immeasurable.
Just about every astronomer I talk to understands these problems and wants to come up with a solution that will work for everybody.
Certainly, it is our NASA's desire to want to build the telescopes, okay? Is there a way that we can come to work together so that we can coexist on the mountain?
What you're really asking is for the Hawaiian people just to give it up. We have compromised. In fact, they have had unencumbered access to all of our sites for 30 years.
I look at culture as a big pie, and every time I come to these meetings, we're cutting up the pie. I mean, how much of this pie got to be gone before the culture's gone?
Such destruction has taken place on the mountain. This has to be remedied before we can go into the future, before there can be peace.
You know, the mountain is already done, it's all eradicated. You cannot put it back like how it was. So, you know, I don't want to see any more eradication on the mountain because we love our mountain.
want people to respect the temple as it's meant to be respected.
Aloha always wins. We never lose when we do aloha. Aloha is the very breath of life, which is the beginning of all creation. May we continue to live aloha in our families, in our communities, in our beloved country, and in the whole world.
Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Native American Public Telecommunications, and the Hawaii Community Foundation. To order copies of this program, please visit naumaka.com.
Chair, board members, Doug Chen, Attorney General. Today is an opportunity for the board, in the words of an editorial yesterday, to assert some needed controls over the summit zone at Mauna Kea. After receiving testimony, the department respectfully asks this board to find credible evidence in the record to indicate that an imminent peril exists to public health, safety, and morals for which quick action is necessary. I will highlight just a few. First, the intentional placement of boulders and rock walls into a road under the board's jurisdiction that is steeply graded, graveled, and has significant drop-offs on the side. Second, the prolonged presence of people at all hours of the night, positioning themselves inside, on top of, and in obstruction of the sole roadway to the summit. This road has no lights, no guardrails, no markings, and no sidewalks. Third, repeated examples of individuals acting in disregard of the color of authority, forest rangers, DOCARE officers, and police, leading to more than 40 arrests in 2 days. Finally, harassment and violent threats to the point that current public and private workers who are required to access the road do not feel safe enough to report to work. For 4 months now, these actions, by themselves or altogether, have been coordinated, produced, strengthened, and supported by a 24-hour presence of individuals who do not have a permit to reside there for any period of time. These are forest reserve lands. This is a hunting and gaming area. They cook there, they sleep there, they live there. I was at the visitor center yesterday and want you to know that even with notice that the board is talking about this rule, in the past 48 hours alone, individuals have erected a very large luxury tent, the largest of all of their structures by far, without a permit and against DLNR regulations. And for these reasons, the department recommends that the board temporarily adopt this rule for 120 days to mitigate these threats and in due course restore normal public access to the summit.
Aloha mai kākou, o Larry Kairi Kamai ko umakua kane, o kapua Keli ikua kamai ko umakua hine noho pulawa aloa mai o kapua ala ku umeleana kamakana makamai mai kalani kamai hewa hine. O au o kapua ala ku umeleana kamakana makamai mai kalani kamai. Noho au ma wai anai, hele au ke kula o halau kumana a o lelo au me ke aloha valeno. I ke ia kakahiaka, ke lohe au I na lula ho a o ko ihana e haloa ko una au. A manao au, hewa loa ke ia maulula. He mau na hesa oko a kupana ole kahana a oko. No laila ku e au I ke ia maulula ho. He kia I Mauna au, he keiki o ka aina au, a kako o au I na ohana manuna o ka Mauna au a kea. E ku paa mau I ke aloha aina. Mahalo.
O wau ka puakili I kua kamai. Kia ko o keiki, wahine e kahi, ma o ko o keiki e lua. Noho māko I wai anai. I olu ma hope o ke ia halawai e ai I waho. Ua lawe mai māko I ka aina no kako apau. No laila, ke olu e ai māko aina. Mahalo nui ia o ko, ua noho ia nei I ka la apau. Mahalo ia Mr. Chen, ia o ko pu, no ko po'omanawa nui, no ko ua ho'olohe ia māko. Mahalo nui. Aka, ke ia hana, ke la mau telescope, ma mako Mauna awa ke a ole pono. Have loa, ke ia ko keiki, o wau kana mama, o umama ma hope iau, o kupuna hine ma hope oia, mako kupuna I ke ia uni. E ku au, e ku maua, no lako, ua hele mai mamua mako, a me mako keiki, a me mako kupuna, mako mo'opuna, ma hope mako. Mahalo for all of your patience, for sitting here all day, for listening to us. Mahalo for serving without pay, excluding you. We trust you to do what's right. We don't need to repeat what's already been said. But what I would like to say, besides opposing these unnecessary so-called emergency rules, is that there are many people missing from this room. There are many voices missing from this testimony. Thankfully, we have Olelo TV. Due to Olelo TV, many people are at least hearing us today, this evening. But that was not to the actions of the state, of their own accord, of their own willingness. Where is the transparency? Where is the inclusion of our people? Do we only represent the big house across the street, the corporations, the international companies with monies? No, you represent the people of Hawaii. Yes, with the laws, the legalities of it all, and the slippery slopes and the snakey snakes of using the law, creating unnecessary laws. Enforce the laws that we have. Enforce the laws that we have. We don't need to create something which is going to limit a particular group of the population, which is always targeted at the expense of everyone else who has come. Even today, we still welcome you, but we don't ask you, and even our own people, we don't ask you to change yourself. We ask each other to adapt to each other, to be tolerant. But tolerance only goes so far. And then we wonder why our people lose patience, cannot present themselves well, that they get upset and they find themselves doing the things that they have to do, illegal as it is, because they are not legalese. They do not slip through the law, like many attorneys know how to slip through the law, create new laws, so that it all works out for who? Everybody but. Many people before us have cited so much information that you folks are probably on overload. But I thank you for hearing it, and I pray that you folks go home and you absorb it, because it's in your heart, it's in your na'au. What is the right thing to do within the law? Create new things that targets a group that actually causes more danger? Why can't it be a win-win like Kavika was saying? Why aren't we looking at the and possibility? Why does it always have to be the them or us? When do we start to consider the and? Hawaiians have been us and you. We are still us and you, because you are us. We are the people of Hawaii, living here, but we know who the first peoples are, and thank you for respecting that. So I ask you folks to do what's right in your na'au, and to think about who the missing voices are. And if I just may add one more. So, we are in 2015. We have technology. To those voices that are not here, I ask you to do teleconferencing. Because for people who come from our neighbor islands, to spend $100, $200, $300, sometimes they have to buy the first class seat. $400 for a 3-minute testimony. How many of us have that? And if they are hunters, practitioners, who of us has that kind of money? So let us use technology as it has been available to us. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you.
I think a lot of the people who are at I've been on the mountain, who've been standing by the side of the road, who've been at the encampment, are wonderful people, very good people. I'm very concerned, though, that I hear a number of people testify that they are prepared to place boulders in the road again. I hear a number of people testify that they're prepared to block the road again. And as we've said here before, we actually do take an oath to uphold the laws. We have our enforcement people who are also, their job is to uphold the laws. And at this point, the law does say that if the telescope construction people come through, that they have a right to come through. The only people who can change that right now is the only people are a court, and we are required to uphold that. So our people need the tools to keep order on the mountain, and for that reason, I'm going to move to approve C2 as it was presented. Sad that this has come to this point. And that there is this conflict between, I think, people who are deeply good on both sides and who have different visions, but live in the same, but have to live in the same world and on the same island. I'm also going to find that based on what we've been presented, that there is an imminent peril to public health, safety, and natural resources that justifies the granting of this emergency rule. And the final comment I'd like to make is that there have been requests and there have been statements that for cultural reasons people may want to go up and stay on the mountain for times outside of the hours, and that this will be possible. There is a provision in the rules for special permits that can be granted by the chair that would deviate from the normal requirements of the rules, including this emergency rule. So this is still a conversation and a dialogue that we can continue to have.
The motion included a request that the board find that an imminent peril to the public health or natural resources necessitated the emergency nature of the rule.
That's part of the motion, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And just to clarify, the rest of the rule provides procedures for permits, and we'd have to refer back to what they are, but
That's in the game management rules, which are being amended here. So there is a clause for special permits in the game management rules.
This is very painful for me. It's probably painful for all of us, but for me it's very painful. But when Governor Abercrombie asked me to serve on the land board, he called me up and asked me to serve. And I said, "You want me on the land board?" He said, "I want you on the land board." And he said, I said, why do you want me on the land board? And only thing he told me was, take the rock out of my shoe. And I didn't quite understand what he meant, but he didn't want to talk about it any more than that. But then other people said, well, we need some new blood in the board and new ideas, and that's why we're telling you you gotta go. And so I decided, okay, I made a decision to talk to my wife, and now I'm here, and I took the oath. All right, and I'm going to do my job correct, even though I have strong feelings for my Hawaiian clients and my Hawaiian neighbors and my Hawaiian family, including my grandson who comes to our house every day. So I'm seconding the motion, and I'm going to be in favor of this. And here are some of the things that I want to have happen. And I want there to be good faith efforts made to work on these things, if they can't be done overnight, because I feel that they are part and parcel of why I'm voting for this. Okay, and it goes like this. Number one, not in any particular order, the Kahuku Mauna Advisory Committee has got to have a robust future. It's there for a reason. It's there for the Hawaiians to know that we care about their pass rights on the mountain. So they have to have a voice in what happened. And it's not whether they have a voice, there has to be an appearance at least that they're being listened to. When they come over here to a meeting like this, and then they tell us that they feel frustrated, the whole reason for us setting that up in 1998 was so that they would have a voice, permanent voice, and so that they would have their pass rights voice. And this Kahuku Mauna Advisory Board was set up for that purpose. They're supposed to be the eyes and ears for the Hawaiians, and they have to be a robust group. So that's got to be worked on. Okay, that's the first thing. Number two, there's got to be a proper disposition, and if it's too late for that, on anybody on a stand-up board or surfing or windsurfing or having swim meets, races in Waihau Lake, that's forbidden. And we expect the dole care officers to strictly restrict what goes down in Waihau Lake. That's a sacred place, and if there's going to be Hawaiian type ceremonies using the lake water, that's okay. But it's not for general recreational use by passers-by. That's a restricted area, and it has to be respected. Very, very sacred place. Next item. This water going down the mountain, we want that investigated and find out where's that water going to. And if it's draining areas that are sacred, we got to find out whether or not that's a good idea. We want to have a report brought to us about that, because we're bothered by that. Especially when we saw those photos of one place all nice and green, everything was nice and Malia, and the next one just got
bushes all mucky already. So we want to work on that. Next item. We encourage peaceful protest. Protest as much as you like, but not on the road, and don't block nobody. And there is going to be some discussion, and the chairwoman is going to take this up. You want to have permits to have a certain protest site on top of the mountain somewhere where you can have a 24-hour facility, but it's not blocking the road. The chairman is open-minded to considering that, and so are we. But we have to let the Western culture and the Hawaiian culture coexist, because we have to uphold the law. All right, the next item, and this is another painful area. I'm very fearful that no matter which way we go, somebody's going to spend money, a lot of money, and no matter which way we go, we might have lawsuits against us, against the state, whatever. It doesn't look like we can prevent that. But we have to be mindful of the fact that tomorrow, the 30-meter limited liability partnership or some other entity can file a claim in federal district court in Hawaii, in San Francisco, in some other state where they're domiciled. And then the issue of whether past rights are going to face the same fate with Rice versus Cayetano, we're going to have to face that. That would be a very sad day for me, because I think the past rights are what gave my clients hope all these years. And that could go the same way as Rice versus Cayetano, because there's an element in past rights that favors the host culture. And you look at the Rice versus Cayetano, very unfortunate words in the case, but it says that any kind of benefit to one nationality by reason of ancestry is constitutionally suspect. That's what it says. Very unfortunate. But that's what we're faced with. That's the reality of it. That's why I'm fearful. This isn't going to end in the state Supreme Court. This is going to end in the U.S. Supreme Court. So you got to be careful what you wish for. You might win the battle, and you might lose the war. And the war is going to be with Justice Scalia and his boys. All you have to do is read the newspaper, see how they vote. Do they vote? Are they going to vote for our local culture? I don't think so. They don't seem to act like it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my fear. I have a hopeful about that. So the last item is, I want to encourage the university. I want the president to hear this, chairman of the Board of Regents. I want them to back up Don Straney, because he hired 2 Hawaiian educators, one for East Hawaii, one for West Hawaii, to start the process of getting the at-risk kids in the Hawaiian pocket communities and other disadvantaged kids from other pocket communities in the Big Island, get them ready for college to go UH Hilo. Tuition waivers, early admittance, opportunities to get ready to go to college, and give them after-school trainings where they're having problems. Give them mentors right into the after-school programs. And that's what he started to do. And hopefully that idea will spread across the state. And we'll get everybody in this picture to help pay for that. Because mitigation measures are part of the deal in the CDUP, and it's part of the appeal in the CDUP. And all the new leases are coming up. If they want to get extensions of the leases, you know, or they want to do upgrades, you know where they got to come? Right here. So this isn't the end of the day. This is just the first day. We're just getting started. And you can see from the comments in here, we got an action board. No sissies in here. all different shapes and sizes, and all of them are ileo, every one of them, all different point of view, and we don't always agree, but we work hard and we try to get along with each other, even though we have strong disagreement. And we need the public's help for us to do a good job, because this job is not easy, and we're facing tough times coming up. So we need to pull together as a community. Thank you, Madam.
Kanawai Mamalahoe was quoted several times today, and it was in several testimonies that we received, and that goes both ways. The safe and respectful use of the road is important to everybody. And I'm disappointed that that hasn't been upheld. I'm disappointed in the words of violence that have been used, maybe not in this room today, but definitely on both sides of the conversation. I feel for our daycare officers, and I appreciate your testimony and what you stand for. Of all the tools that we have, I don't know that we're using the right tool right now. And I don't know that we've given you the right tools and all the tools and resources that you could use as well. It's conflicting. I hear you guys talk and I feel the same way you do. Having said that, we just had the emergency rules for the Loli last meeting. When it came to impacts to natural resources, we received a certain amount of information on species. I didn't receive that about the natural resources at this point in time. In other issues before us, when there's been violations, we've received reports about those violations and investigations into those violations. I recognize the challenges of the existing rules on the books and how maybe that challenge serving violations, but I still think that's part of the process, and that was a tool that we had as well that we could have used. We have Kahuku Mauna, we have Ahamoku Council, we have the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, many people who have offered help in the past and that are resources to Office of Mauna Kea Management, the university, and to the board, and that's a tool that I don't feel that we used beforehand. I don't know that I feel that I've heard a genuine understanding from all sides of what it means to have cultural practice at Mauna Kea. I hear the cultural practice and the camping sort of woven together along with our First Amendment rights. And I don't know that I have heard clearly how we've tried to understand each of those conversations and to move forward with resolutions on each of them as is appropriate for them. I feel that we're lumping them together. And I recognize that, like my fellow board members, that the situation has come to a head at this point in time, requiring these types of rules to come before us, because other tools and other efforts weren't necessarily used ahead of time. So for those of us that have to go forward, continue to serve our land, continue to serve our people, I think we do need to pause every now and then and think of the tools that we have on hand. You don't bring your o'o when you have to do a ko'i type of job. You don't take your o'o if what you really want to do is hoi. And I don't know that these rules really accomplish are the right tool at the right time for this particular situation. I think we've brought the wrong tool to a very, very challenging situation, and I share the fear with my board members of the violence that we hear about, which is very different from having perseverance. I'm concerned about the public safety issues that have already occurred and the potential for more public safety issues. And I hope that we can all abide by Kanawai Mamalahoe and find a way to have peaceful and respectful conversations and recognizing how we can come to some sort of aloha in this situation. Mahalo.
The motion is to approve the rule as submitted today.
There's no assurance
And
for
there's a
the
second.
Hawaiians. There's no
There's a
assurance
second.
just now.
I second the motion.
You did. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aole.
Ole.
Motion's passed. Meeting's adjourned.
Kato, who is with UH West Oahu, and he will be moderating the panel tonight. And then he will introduce each of the presenters with a little bio. Thank you.
Hello, my kakoa pau. Thank you for coming tonight. For those of us who are coming from town, we would say, we're fortunate to be here in this event because we get inspired every time I come to the Waianae community. As you can see in the hearing testimonies, you can see Kapua and her daughter was the clearest in articulating what the real issue is. I think it's rooted in the Waianae community. When we come here, we get in touch with the ancient consciousness. We feel the ancient consciousness coming from the people, from the land. That's why we are fortunate to be here tonight. Thank you very much. So we'd like to introduce you the first speaker, Professor, sorry. Right here. Okay. Professor Darwin Bonnet. He was my former colleague from LCC Waianae. And he's a science instructor at the LCC Waianae. And he graduated from BYU. He got his BA at BYU. And he got his master's in the East New Mexico University. And he's currently teaching astronomy, human biology, oceanography, and ecology. And he teaches both physical science and biological science. He's very popular among the Waianae students. So let's have Professor Darwin Bonnet come over here, and he's going to talk about the astronomy. Instructor in Waianae perspective.
All right, so I'm the bad guy. Not really. I feel very disheartened that we've gotten to this point where something I really love, which is astronomy, in addition to the sciences, has created such a conflict. And what I'm going to do is show you some slides. We've been given 15 minutes, so I'm going to do what I can. But I do want to start off by prefacing and saying that some of the most amazing things we've discovered in astronomy has come from Mauna Kea. And so when you think of what we've discovered and yet what's been created, it creates this conflict. Right now, they have the International Astronomical Union meeting. You probably heard about in the news. Several thousand professional astronomers. And probably most of them really don't even know what the issue is. The local astronomers do. But those who come, use Mauna Kea, I believe they really don't have a feel for what's happening. And so the discussion that is desired to have with this group, I think should happen. Let's go ahead and start. Maybe, should we turn off one light? Just so you can see. Back up one slide. Okay, she's going to do the slides for me. So, the 30-meter telescope, yes. Side, okay. We'll adjust here. Okay, so we have kind of two things that go together, the 30-meter telescope and then what's already present on Mauna Kea. And I think a lot of things presented in the first video really clarified some of the history about what's happened. So here's an artist's conception. This is a big structure. And it will be the most powerful telescope ever built on the planet if it's built on Mauna Kea or if it's built anywhere else in the world. Okay? So keep in mind something very important. Astronomy today is based on instruments, and the telescope is the instrument that we use. It was invented in 1609, and that's 406 years ago. And obviously over 406 years, the technology has increased. From a simple little tube to something that's as big as the 30 meter, the ability to improve the technology, to look farther into space, to see detail has really increased. So as a comparison, if you go out on a clear night, you can find the planet Saturn. It looks like a dot in the sky. With instruments, you can see much more detail. And this is what we've been given through the technologies, the ability to see way beyond what we can see with our naked eye. So the real issue in astronomy all comes down to the fact that we have an atmosphere. And that's a good thing because we breathe the atmosphere. It's good for us. But the atmosphere, the gases, the moisture, dust, and whatever's in the air interferes with what we're trying to look at, which is beyond the atmosphere. Light passing, energy passing through the atmosphere gets distorted, blocked, somehow altered, and so it creates the problem of how do we deal with trying to observe what's in space while we're here on the Earth. So obviously the atmosphere we know quite a bit. Weather is very important. It occurs closest to the Earth. We have well-defined regions that we can talk about in terms of the structure. Obviously the higher you go, the less air there is, and at some point we want to recognize that there is air, even though there's still a presence. And so the closest, what we call the troposphere, is where we're located. And this is where most of the weather happens. And this is where most of the issue is, the greatest concentration of air. So clouds and weather conditions obviously interfere. If you want to look at the stars, planets, and it's a cloudy night, you can't do it. So even on Mauna Kea or any other place that we put things up high in elevation, if it's a cloudy night, you can't observe. Okay, so this is one of the problems we have to deal with because we're on the surface of the Earth. Okay, this little animation shows two things: the light coming through the atmosphere, especially when there's energy in the atmosphere. It's been a warm day. Energy coming from the surface creates turbulence, and so stars twinkle. So although you may know the song "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," we don't want that in astronomy. We want crystal clear. And so if you notice the top illustration at the bottom, there's already a partial answer here. The higher you go up in elevation, and on the Earth, mountains being highest places, you have less turbulence. So if you can see the scattering of those little dots representing the object you're looking at, it's less on the bottom, on the top. So this becomes one of the first things to consider. Where are we going to observe from? And mountains play a key role. Not just visible light, there's also other forms of energy that come from stars and planets and objects out there. We usually think about what we can see, which is the visible light. Okay? We can also talk about radio telescopes. And the video that we showed first, or saw first, showed some of the small radio telescopes. But there's a range of energy that doesn't make it to the surface. It's blocked by the atmosphere. So again, the higher you can get up, the more likely you're going to be able to measure that. Things like the gamma and X-rays, other forms of energy. So we're limited on the surface to looking at all the different forms of energy coming to really visible light and radio waves. Light pollution is a big problem. Where you have lots of people or lots of structures that produce light, that's what you're trying to look at. And so it interferes. It's like if I'm shining a flashlight into your face while you're looking at something, it doesn't help. So that's something that's a problem. Okay? So this leaves us with an interesting question. Here's a picture of our planet looking back from space. Where on Earth can we get the best observations of space, which is out there? Considering that the whole planet is covered by an atmosphere, and we do have weather, and we do have dust and light pollution and so forth. Okay. So if we look at a cross-section, we can go outside tonight, and if it's clear, you can see what's up there. If you can go higher into a mountain, you can see even more. The conditions become more favorable. If you can get up higher into the atmosphere, the air, let's say you launch a balloon with an instrument attached, or an aircraft with instruments, you can get even better pictures. The other night, I returned from the mainland, and as we were flying in the evening, thousands of feet up, nice clear view of the sky. Okay? The best place is actually out in space. Get above the atmosphere. Since that's what's interfering, that's the best place to go. The problem is, as you go up in altitude, the cost increases tremendously. The technical challenges to put instruments and to operate them in space is challenging. The ability to maintain something that you can't necessarily get to is also challenging. So when we look at the costs versus what we're trying to do, one of the best places, in fact the best place, are on mountains, the highest peaks that we can get on the surface. So I've got a few pictures. We've built around the world over the last several hundred years observatories which contain the telescopes, the instruments inside. So what I'd like you to do, there's like 5 or 6 pictures, is just look at where these places are. How accessible are they? What kind of environment are they built in, and the complexity? So here's one called the Sphinx Observatory. It's in Switzerland. You notice lots of mountains around there, not a lot of people, very isolated. It's built on this. How do you get there? By helicopter, okay? And so every time someone goes there, you think about the cost involved and the difficulty. Bad weather, you may be stuck there for a while, or may not be able to get there, okay? Next one. Here's one in Chile, and I will point out, it's an upcoming slide, that Chile is one of the contenders, 3 sites in fact, for the 30-meter telescope. It's in the southern hemisphere, so it's quite a distance away from where we are. But here again you see a number of buildings, each one having instruments inside, that has been constructed. Okay, Texas, not so high in elevation, not a lot of high mountains in Texas. In fact, you can see vegetation, a nice road. It's the best they can do, so you build it up there. It's better than being lower, because even a few thousand feet can give you a much better observing conditions. Okay, Kitt Peak, which is also quite famous in Arizona. Also, you see vegetation, so thinking about how high are they and what are the conditions that are there. Okay, here's one in India, the Hanle Observatory. Again, this one's fairly isolated, so you start thinking if you have lots of mountains versus one mountain, how many people would even be out there? How many people even are familiar with the mountains? Are these mountains sacred to these people, and so forth? And of course, Mauna Kea. And some labels of some of the telescopes. They mention the Keck observatories. You can see the Keck 1 and Keck 2. These are the biggest in terms of size. And in the front, you can see the Canada, France, Hawaii. So these have all been built in this cluster. And if you go to the next slide, same thing, but you'll notice where the clouds are. It's fairly high elevation. And so you're above a lot of the conditions that we're trying to avoid, cloud coverage. So I've had the opportunity to go to Mauna Kea on several occasions, and it's an amazing place. And I remember my first time there, looking out at what I thought was the ocean was in fact clouds. It was clouds, and they're beneath. It's like, wow, that's really amazing. I'd never seen that before. Okay, and so it's high up in elevation. Okay, so why Mauna Kea for astronomy? We've got lots of mountains in the world, and there's going to be 2 things we look at here. But if we kind of summarize, it's high in altitude, so it's above a lot of the atmosphere, and every bit higher you get, the better. It's a very dry environment. Moisture in the air creates some of this problem that we have. Stable airflow, okay, it goes over. We have very little air and light pollution on the mountain. It's easily accessible. We've got a road. You can go in a very short time from Hilo up to the mountain versus flying in a helicopter or taking days to get there. And as we'll see in a moment, it's near the equator, okay? Because Hawaii's near the equator. Not exactly, but we're close. So in comparing Mauna Kea to the many other places that telescopes have been built as permanent structures, it is considered, based on the conditions there, as one of the best places in the world to observe. And so it's kind of like saying you can surf Makaha or you can surf Waikiki. And so obviously people are going to say, if it's the best place, let's go there, okay? And so it's a favorable place, okay? All right? There's something else that we have to consider. Because there are many mountains on the planet, and these are distributed throughout huge geographic regions, we have to consider the shape of the Earth, and we have to consider the fact that the Earth moves, okay? In particular, we're talking about the rotation, okay? So think of a dome, and think of the center of this dome as where a person can stand. Every person in the planet can go out and look up. Not everyone gets to see the ocean, not everyone gets to see deserts or mountains or prairies, but pretty much anywhere on the planet you can look up. And if you move in a circle, you can define a region that in the circle and overhead creates this dome of observation. So just as I indicated, you can put coordinates on there, north, south, east, west, zenith being straight overhead. So for the next few pictures, think of a dome over an observer. If I'm on the North Pole, represented by the N in this diagram, and my dome is looking up straight above me and out to the horizon, I have a really good view of what's out there. But I won't see what's beneath the equator. So everything that's in the southern hemisphere is blocked. I will only see half the sky. Okay. However, if I'm on the equator, the fact that the Earth rotates and I'm rotating with it, I will see a very large percentage. Some of the stars right at the north and south region, I may not be able to see. They're going to be right on my horizon. So not only do we want to look at putting observatories on mountains as a good place, but to see the maximum amount of the sky, we look at the equator. So not a very clear picture, but that red line represents the equator. And these are the countries that are on the equator, okay? So on the side, what kinds of mountain conditions exist in these countries? What kind of political and economic stability? What kind of accessibility do we have? I lived in Kiribati for 2 years. I was a teacher there in high school. And it's on the equator, but it's also flat. They're atolls. There's no mountains. And the majority of the time, I'd say 80%, it was clouded. Not a good place for astronomy in the sense of instruments. As we go through these, you start thinking about, do we want to put $1 billion telescope in these regions when we think about, is it politically stable? I invest money, what's going to happen in 5, 10 years in that country? Okay? Or the economic stability and so forth. So this is something to consider. Okay? Go ahead. Not on the equator, but we have seen failures where economics or politics has caused projects that have been successful to fail. Here's one in Kazakhstan. This was a very noted observatory. It's now abandoned. Okay? 2 minutes, keep going. Okay? Denmark, abandoned. Okay? Even cultures that have disappeared, and the observatories that probably disappeared. And Iraq. This was a very noted observatory, but because of politics and war, it's now a destroyed structure. Okay, so maybe we can't find ideal conditions on the equator, so near the equator, Mauna Kea comes into place. High altitude, near the equator. So what does TMT promise? Well, you can read all the promises, but the key thing is they have promised amazing data from the farthest reaches of the universe to go beyond what we can do now, and then as a secondary, jobs, money, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? These are things that have been said are part of what they're offering. Now, I don't know all the details, but this is what they're saying. So here's an artist's conception again, size, go ahead. And for comparison, the largest right now, the 10 meter, the mirror system, you can see compared to the 30 meter, much bigger mirror system, which is what reflects the light. Okay, here's where it would be built, where they intend to build it. And so you can see the structure. And from Hilo, that's what it would look like. Okay, another bump on the hill, on the mountain. Okay, just so you realize, this telescope could be built in other places, because when they first proposed it, there was in fact 5 sites. 3 in Chile, 1 in Mexico, and the first site in Hawaii. So if this telescope is not built in Hawaii, it can be built in other places. Good. Right. So a few more slides and I'm getting right at the end here. My thoughts, should the TMT be built? Yes. Okay, but wait, let me get the second one. I say yes because the knowledge will be gained is amazing. But the second question is the relevant one. Should it be built on Mauna Kea? And my thoughts, okay. You heard about environmental concerns. Those would have to be addressed, okay. Most important, if cultural concerns can be addressed and agreements reached, that's where all this discussion is going on. And there's many groups involved. And I personally think that no one group should hijack on either side. It has to come to an agreement. Everyone has to be able to have a voice. Everyone has to be able to say what they want. If there's an agreement, it can be done. If there's not, that's an if, okay, you build it. And of course, UH and the state have to be held responsible, which has been the issue, okay? And the third thing, my thoughts, we need to explore and discuss new opportunities to interface the culture and modern astronomy. There's a disconnect. We can learn from each other. Okay. Last couple slides. Just consider the fact that Mauna Kea has been around for millions of years, and it will continue as a mountain for millions of years. The whole issue of astronomy has been a few decades. Try to imagine in a couple hundred years, 100 years, what's it going to be like? Astronomy, we may not even need to use mountains. We can put things in space. If we can find cheaper ways, we won't need to use mountains. What about the culture in Hawaii? How will it change and evolve? I don't know, but think about this in the future. How will the culture be there? Even society, will even be here? Okay, I think 200 years. And other questions, just thinking about not the immediate future, but the long term. Okay, I would like to kind of wrap this up with the idea that we're missing opportunities, I feel. And I present 4 things to consider. We have the possibility, in many situations, to have like an artist or musician in residence. Why not have a cultural practitioner residence? Goes into the observatories, works with the astronomers, teaches them about the culture, at the same time learns what they're doing and brings it back to the culture. Okay? How about a visitor center that includes the cultural discussion, or even a separate center? If you go to the visitor center, I've never seen anything that's culturally represented. Okay? Number 3, I teach students. Many have never been to Mauna Kea. There's a certain power when you go there. And to see it in a picture, or to see it in a video is not the same as experiencing it. When I was on the mainland, someone asked me, why are the people so upset and excited? I said, because they've been on Mauna Kea. They know what it's there. They know what it's like there, okay? I felt that myself. So why not look at ways to find programs and funding to send students they can experience, okay, however you want to define a student. Okay, maybe even the idea of creating a cultural institute for astronomy, world class, just ideas. Okay, I think there's possibilities, and maybe you don't like these ideas. They're my ideas, but I think there are possibilities. Okay, last thing.
Great
Thank you.
ideas, but does it cure cancer and the food shortage upon the earth with all the money that we're giving to it?
Okay.
There's a balanced question, right?
Should I address this? No. Okay. Just as a short answer for that, this won't, because that's not what astronomy does.
Yeah,
so,
I realize that, but I'm talking about the money and the things that happen on the earth. So just like artificial intelligence, and should we give robots the ability, should we do this in pure space like this? That's the other question.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. So in my classes, when we talk about it, and we talk about what they're learning from with this, what we can do and what we should do are 2 questions that you have to consider. Just because we can make something doesn't mean we should. Okay. But astronomy itself it's not going to solve some of the problems that we talk, because it's the nature of the science. Other fields of science would address it.
Just the money that is put into it. That's what I'm talking about. The money.
Yeah, and it's a lot of money. It is.
Okay, so we're going to have a question and answer at the end. So, but we want to acknowledge Professor Darwin Bonnet for coming. It's a very difficult position to take. We're going to, clap aloha. Thank you very much. So, like I said, we're going to have a question and answer. So, can you write it down, your questions, so you'll be ready? Okay. All right. So, the next speaker is Sister Sherry Muneoka, and she's currently a community outreach coordinator for KAHEA, the Hawaiian Environmental Alliance, and she also worked with QLCC, Queen Iokalani Children's Center, and also the Mao Farms. And she's a 2003 graduate of Kamehameha School, and she got her BA in sociology from the University of Evansville, and then she got MSW from UH Mauna. And she's also one of the co-authors of the article, Sacred Mountain, Sacred by Ambition, which appeared on April 19th, 2015, Star Advertiser. So let's have a warm welcome, Sister Sherry Muneo.
Hi everybody, lots of familiar faces. Nice to be here tonight, Aloha. I'm not too sure what I want to talk about tonight. There's a lot of different angles that you can come at this from. Some of that biography is not quite correct. I used to be the community outreach coordinator at Kahea, and that's how I was so fortunate to first work in this community on the Purple Spot. I haven't been out here in a little while. But while I was at Kahea was also when the TMT permitting was coming through at the BLNR. And so the permit the big one that they needed to apply for is called a CDUP, which is the Conservation District Use Permit. And so I kind of, I don't want to go too deep into one aspect because I feel like people know a lot already. Everything that's been happening since April, there's tons of news articles ad nauseum, which I'm sure you folks have read and watched. So I don't want to take up too much time. I want to make sure we leave time for question and answer because as we see, we have burning questions. So I just wanted to go over some high points, and then if people have specific things that they want me to cover, then I can do my best on that. So, and then actually I had a question, technology questions. Do we have access to the internet here? If we do, I saw, I think his name is Kekwa Kilikwa. I think I seen him when I walked in. And he gave really powerful testimony at the emergency rules meeting, and I know we're showing clips from that, so if we could pull that up, that would be really good, I think, for discussion. I wanted to mahalo Darwin because that's it takes a lot of courage to come from that perspective into a room, especially in this moment where things are really emotional. And so, mahalo Darwin for that. So the way I kind of describe coming at all of these different issues that we're facing right now in Hawaii is if you've ever tried to clear space for growing something or for a lo'i and it's covered in California grass, you kind of have a couple of options. You can either grab the weed whacker, or other people like to grab the shovel and take out the clump, at the root. So Professor Chang, I think, is going to talk a little bit about grabbing the shovel, and I feel like what we've been working on has been a lot of weed whacking, and I think both are really, really valuable. And the narrative that's kind of being put out as of late in the last few months, I don't think always does a good job at valuing both of those tactics. I think both are really important. Okay, back to the CDUP. So that process started, the application started kind of a long time ago, but the hearings were in around 2010, 2011. And a conservation district use permit basically has 8 criteria around that a project needs to meet in order to be happen inside of a conservation district. And they're supposed to be seen as an exception to the general purpose of a conservation district, which is to conserve something. And our position has been that it can't meet any of the 8 criteria. But I just want to talk about a few. One of them, sorry Sparky if I'm making it hard to film. One of them is that which one is it here? That the proposed land use will not cause substantial adverse impact to existing natural resources within the surrounding areas. And so as we saw in the movie, there was a ruling that found that all of the damage that's been done on Mauna Kea has been substantial, adverse, and significant. So it's a good lesson in the way they try and use wordsmithing and laws to get around these kinds of things. So we were wondering, how are they going to get around that when the finding used the exact language of what is prohibited in a conservation district. And to our shock and dismay, they said that indeed, all of them together have caused this bad impact, but our project alone does not cause substantial, significant adverse impacts. So, you know, I had to tell them, what you're basically telling us is you have a bucket of toxic waste that's already overflowing. Now you're telling me that your telescope or your project is going to dump more waste in that, and we know waste is going to come out, but you're going to tell me that's not yours, and it's all good. So I think that this one does a really good job at highlighting the different orientation to Mauna Kea, which is essentially that for people who put Mauna Kea at the center of the decision making, there's only one Mauna. You can't say, oh, this project does this much damage and this one does that much damage. There's only one. So the uncle in the video, kind of towards the end, it always makes me so sad when he says, you know, you cannot put it back. But it's true, you cannot put it back. So when we're looking at the later footage of them, the decision making on the emergency rules, which always makes my blood boil when I watch it, especially when Stanley Rohrig is talking, and he starts talking about mitigation, and about how, so mitigation is supposed to make the harm less, yeah? So when that finding about the significant substantial impacts came out, they're talking about physical alterations to that land. So the top of that mountain is 38 feet shorter than Akuamite, right? We know that it's horrid. I have like chicken skin, not the good kind, pictures where they bulldoze pu'u right off the edge. You can see the material go right off the edge on the side. We know, we found out after the fact that, okay, so, sorry, I'm getting kind of off track here, but this one like really, really made me mad and like is gas in my tank, so I'm gonna tell you guys this story. So, the VQ bug habitat, so you guys know a little bit about the VQ bug. It's this very special bug, only lives not only on Mauna Kea, but only at the top of Mauna Kea, hence its name, VQ, the summit. And they found out after the fact that the second best habitat for that bug had been destroyed. And I never really knew why, but actually, Aunty Deb Ward, who's in that video and is one of the petitioners in the case, her partner is an entomologist, and he's the one who discovered what happened. So what happened was, and in the report it says that they pushed in the edges of the pu'u, which inside the pu'u was where that habitat was, and that it was covered. And I was like, okay, horrors, that's awful. Then I found out when I talked to Auntie, she said that they're actually burying construction waste inside the pu'u. That's why they were pushing over the edge, and that's what destroyed the habitat. So after the fact, when that all comes out, which is like years after Paul already, what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens. Their punishment is that they have to do studies, to do baseline studies of how many VQ bugs there are. That was the outcome of that. So that's the kind of stuff, when they're talking about mitigation, that doesn't actually address the harm that happened. So right now, the things that they're trying to push around in the community as mitigation are scholarship monies. Because who's gonna say no to scholarship money? Like, yeah, we all love education, that's great, but it doesn't actually address a building the size of Aloha Tower on Mauna Kea, right? It doesn't address 2 stories of Mauna Kea excavated out. No amount of money is gonna undo that. They don't understand because money isn't what's motivating us. So they keep offering that, and they are confused why we're not satisfied by that. Yeah, so it's an orientation thing. They don't understand. So there's that one. Sorry, I'm just kind of meandering around. So if you need to rein me in, you let me know. Okay. Let's look at another one of the 8 criteria, shall we? How about, which is a good one? The subdivision of land will not be utilized to increase the intensity of land uses in the conservation district. Let's look at that one. Subdivision of land. So the general lease that went out to UH happened in 1968. And to my shock and horror, they pay all of $1 a year, which is crazy, right? Yeah, they only pay $1 a year. Phenomenal. And then even more crazy is that they turn around and they have at least to our knowledge, at least 11 subleases. So my question is, how can you have 11 subleases and meet the requirement that the subdivision of land will not be utilized to increase the intensity of land use? Because I don't know how you can build another telescope and not intensify a land use. I don't think that's actually possible. And the way that public land works is that it's supposed to be rented out at fair market rent, and that money is 20% supposed to go to OHA, the other money is supposed to go to the general fund towards the benefit of the public, because it's public land, so it's supposed to be for public benefit. Well, unfortunately, they're subleasing for either $1 or for nothing, for no money at all. And but then so does the astronomer say in the video, he says, the agreed upon currency is not money, but telescope viewing time. Huh? So my question is, who agreed? When you say agreed upon, who agreed? Not the public, I can tell you that, not Hawaiians, because that's like an outrageous arrangement, right? So for the longest time, we're trying to find out how much money does it actually go for, because other telescopes, the ones that they sublease to, then sell their time to other institutions. So that's why we want to know, what is UH's benefit? And so this article came out about Yale renting telescope time up there, and it came out to $80,000 for one night. So that's the benefit that UH is getting, and the question is, does that fulfill the requirement of offering public benefit that public land is supposed to? And where's the 20% that's supposed to go to OHA? Also, who said that you can make any kind of side arrangement, like, we're just gonna take telescope viewing time? I mean, I don't really know how all of that works. So, I think the subdivision 1 is really interesting because, and I'm sorry, I don't want to pick on you, Darwin, so I say this lovingly. No, I don't want to. But, you know, you kind of talked a little bit about the reasons why Mauna Kea is the best place to do astronomy in the world, or even just a good place to do in the world. And I don't actually think anybody disagrees. I think we all agree. Hawaiians agreed. It's why we used Mauna Kea for astronomy as well. But I think the issue really is about people entitling themselves to something that is not theirs. And it's about authority. It's about who gets to say, sure, come on in, right? So every time I hear the phrase host culture, I get really irritated because I want to know, if somebody just shows up at your house and doesn't leave, can you really call me a host? If somebody, you know what I mean? It's like, there was no invitation. And so that kind of framework is really irritating to me. So the state having these rules, which have pukas in them, as they are. Big pukas, correct. But then the fact that they don't even apply their own rules, that's the part that kills me. Because I mean, if we could get there, if we could start there, I think we would be having a different conversation. So, you know, Professor Chang is going to talk about jurisdictional issues. I kind of tell people when they're saying, because I know and believe and understand that Hawaii is an occupied country. I understand the state of Hawaii is illegitimate. And people are like, how can you pour so much time and energy into this thing that doesn't work? Right? But I keep doing it, and I've been doing it for many years. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you don't weed whack, every once in a while the thing takes over, right? So if I believe that we're gonna get our country back, and we have to make sure that there's something to get back. Yeah, so if they completely destroy it, then what? What you can get back, right? So I think that's really important. The other thing is that the reason why it's so soul-sucking to go to BLNR and to be there all day and then have that happen, which I could feel the energy in the room go, yeah, when they decided, even though we all knew it happened already. The reason why it feels like that, I think, is when you go in there thinking that they're gonna offer a solution, that they're gonna, this is gonna like be the way that's gonna fix this. But I think once you realize that that's actually not why you're there, or not the full reason why you're there, it becomes easier. So when I started realizing how much I depend on, how much it bolsters me when I see my kupuna's name on old things, standing up, saying something, and you know how much power that has for us, and that becomes your audience, then you can feel good regardless of the outcome. And we're in it to win it. I'm not saying, great, just talk down 100 years. Of course, I want the outcome to be good, but you have to have other ways to measure that it was a good day. And sometimes it's not only the people you're mopuna, but it's the other people in the room. To feel sane, to hear an articulated argument where you're like, it's not just me. That's how energy builds and feeds off each other, and why it's really important to go. And it's so important that different kinds of people go, because your face, the way you talk, all those things, when people see those different things, something's gonna remind them of themselves and say, oh, she can do it, I can do it. And then that's how it grows, yeah. So I understand that it's a little bit waste time, kind of, sort of, but there's other reasons why we do it. So anyway, I don't know, I'm getting this one, so I think I'm mahalo.
She brought up this very important point about ecological concerns, because Native people all over the world, they put those places as kapu, sacred places, because there's meanings behind it, functions behind them. One of them is ecological importance. So the Aborigines in Australia, they put a mountain kapu, the sacred mountain, because there's uranium inside. The Mauna Kea is the same thing. You don't touch that because it's ecological importance. And I was perusing this Reuters news this morning, and this Professor Camille Parmesan from the University of Plymouth in UK, she said that since the late 19th century, the whole worldwide temperature went up 0.8 Celsius, which is 1.7 Fahrenheit. And she's saying we're already seeing contraction of species in the most sensitive ecosystems, such as those dependent upon sea ices, those living on mountaintops. So we talk about beku bugs, we're talking about paria, we're talking about the mamare on top. It's an ecosystem. So even if we leave them alone without telescopes, they're going to get affected. So why are we going over there? Why not us, but they're going up there destroying the ecosystem. It doesn't make sense. So we have to come to the sanity, not just for Hawaii, but for all over the world. It's a very critical point at this point in humanity, for the planet. So next speaker, Dr. Williamson Chan. He's a professor of law at the Richard Williamson School of Law. And he graduated from Princeton. He got a law degree, JD from UC Berkeley. And then he's been involved in various cases. And recently, he got involved in this war crime reporting with Keanu Sain and others. So he's getting to this international the legal realm. So he's going to talk about the issue of crown lands. And he's defending, not the okay. So he's defending Uncle Skippy Ioane.
Yes, Skippy and his criminal.
Okay, so let's welcome Dr. Williamson Chan.
It's aloha. Aloha. It's great to be in Nanakuli because this is really the homeland of the Hawaiian people. This is where it counts. And I should have been here a long time ago, but my spirit was here. And let me just say that I wish I had more training in kapu aloha, because I get really pissed off. I really get upset, and you cannot measure the number of things upset me. So I don't know how much time I have tonight, but I'm going to tell you all the things that upset me, okay? First, having to watch the video of the Board of Land and Natural Resources talk, I went and I testified, and I said, I know you're nice people, but I'm going to sue you here. Don't take it personally. And then Chris Ewan said, hey, did you ever write this article that said Barack Obama could, by the Antiquities Act, declare Mauna Kea a sacred place? I said, yeah. You're wrong. Oh, sometimes I'm wrong. And then he said, do you think the state has jurisdiction? I said, do you think a joint resolution can take over the Hawaiian Islands? And he got mad at me. He said, you believe in federal authority? Oh, they got authority.
I'm not here.
So then Not here. They didn't show that part. I get so mad I gotta walk out. But let me just say, Wednesday I filed a suit in First Circuit Court. First Circuit Court is Honolulu Court to declare the emergency rules unconstitutional, beyond their power, and a violation of everything. Okay, yesterday I was in Waimea. For the first time in 20 years, the argument was made that the state of Hawaii cannot prosecute Skippy Ione because they can't prove that he's in the territory of the state of Hawaii. In other words, the joint resolution never took over Hawaii. That's been a myth. That's the big difference now and 20 or 30 years ago. We're smarter. We're smarter. We're getting educated. And I'm going to go through that. But if you're interested in my writings on all of this, I would say the good things to read are in Civil Beat. It's an online newspaper. The best one is probably called The Sacred and the Destruction of Our Next Generation. I'm going to go into that. And I wrote a piece on host cultures. And I've written a lot that you can read, like in the testimony against the board, about this jurisdictional thing. So here's the thing, I'm a Hawaiian, but they sent me to the Western world. So I cannot speak to Olelo, but I know their ways. I know how to fight them. And Hawaiians, they're learning, but we got to train our warriors in that skill. So I want to start out with this. It's a real simple question to me. Would they put a football stadium on the Western Wall where the Jews are praying? No, never. I was speaking in Japan, and I was trying to tell them about Mauna Kea. I said, would you ever put like a 18-story building on Mount Fuji or Fujisan? Would you? No. That's simple as that. What we consider sacred and dear is that which is precious to us. It's not a question of your opinion. What's sacred and dear to you? And your children. Your children. You would do anything for your child. They need a kidney, you give a kidney. The house burning down, you go rush into the house. And if they don't do that, you go rush in anyway. That's what sacred means. You have no control. It's against the law. Doesn't matter the first responder, the police officer, the HPD, the fire department say, don't go in, don't go in. You're going to save. That means so much. It's more than your life. That's what sacred means. You cannot choose to do something else. And everybody has something which is sacred. And what they don't realize is they're in our house. This is our house.
Yes.
And here's what it is. Here's what it's like. Imagine the most sacred person in Hawaii, Keopuolani, most sacred. And imagine the Western world had a violinist, the greatest violinist in the world. But he had a blood disease that he would die from if he didn't get the right kind of enzymes. So they searched the world, and they find out Keopuolani has the right enzymes. So one night, without us knowing, he comes in here, they bring him in here, they hook him up to Keopuolani for life. Because Keopuolani can keep him alive. And they go, hey, that's our most sacred violinist. You know, we got to keep him alive. I know that's your sacred queen, but we have two sacreds. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. The reason we're here is for one, there's only one explanation. We're not in control of our lands. We're asking them not to do this. We're asking them, we got to prove to them. The question is, would they put a stadium or an observatory on Mount Rushmore? They ought to. It's an ugly place. Would they put one in Arlington? No. You know what the difference between the West and the East is? In the West, the sacred places is not the land, not the Aina. Sacred is man when he dies somewhere, he makes that place sacred. Like Calvary, where Jesus died. Or Arlington. Imagine, you know how sacred Arizona Memorial is. You cannot do nothing. You whisper, they piss them off. They understand that. Why can't they understand Mauna Kea? They say, oh, let's compromise. You can compromise? Would you compromise on saving your child? Would you say, oh yeah, I guess I should worry. I don't give that kidney. She's gonna be okay. We'll give half kidney. We'll give one. The idea is this. The sacred is not articulable. It's not something you can explain. They're demanding us to explain. They say, how many times you went up the mountain? That's not the point. The point is, you cannot define it, and well, it's ours. And here's the problem. They took our country in 1893. The U.S. took Hawaii in 1898. And I'm going to show you later that that was not at all what really happened. But I want to get to a second point, which is, why is this such a big issue? Why is it so a worldwide issue now? Why are the young people leading it in Hawaii? The Lanakilas, the Ho'okais. You notice that. It's the next generation, the immersion school graduates. They have the values. This is what's happening. It's what the generation today is called the millennials. And the next generation, they don't have a future in Hawaii. They cannot afford a house. They cannot afford a family. They're going to get low wages. They're getting education for jobs they'll never find here. They have to move away. There's no hope for them. They're going to have to pay the bills of the debts of the state, the rail tax. They're going to have to pay all that, and where are they going to live? Where are they going to live? There's no housing for them. They're going to live in your house, but you can only fit one. What about your other child? No, the problem is, this is the last straw. It's like if you had all these terrible things happening, you had diabetes, and then they go attack your tutu. You go, that's it. That's it. I'm gonna stop them anyway. They can't. What we have here is Hawaii is unlivable. Especially Honolulu. It's unlivable. I came through the traffic. Airport to here, 2.5 hours. What kind of life is that? You gotta work 3 jobs. You're gonna be working in the tourist industry. What is the future for them? And if you take this away from them, what do they have? So what is going on here is as bad as the overthrow. It's as bad as the annexation. It's as bad as the deaths of 3/4 of the Hawaiian people. It's the destruction of what's left. This is the last stand. That's why there is so much emotion around the world. See, people can empathize when you're sincere about your sacred things. If somebody goes try to save his child, I understand that. I understand that. There was a mountain, Kinabalu in Sabah, where these tourists, they took off their clothes, they're playing around. People got really pissed off. I didn't hear anything about, well, that's a great place to take off your clothes. But Hawaiians consider the whole of the earth, the Aina, and sacred. It's not like the West. Places are profane, they become sacred by human deed. A war, a battle, usually. You die there, like Arizona. It's a different view of it. You don't have to explain that I go to Mauna Kea, somebody died at Mauna Kea, there's bugs on Mauna Kea, and burial grounds. No, the Aina, everything from our point of view is sacred. That's a fundamental difference, and that's what we were meant to bring to the world, the message that the planet itself, the Aina, everything is sacred. So I want to get to the legal side, just briefly. And the legal side is this. Let me get some notes. Yesterday on Thursday, I filed 1,000 pages of exhibits. So you gotta give me a minute. Oh, okay, never mind. There's 1,000 pages of exhibits, and the judge was shocked. And she said, "And you give them on Monday?" I go, "Well, you know, costs a lot to copy," and the prosecutor had nothing to say. And it goes like this. I'm representing one of the protectors who was arrested for obstruction. The best defense, and I am obligated to make the best defense, is that this court has no jurisdiction. You've probably heard of that. This court has no power over it. There's two kinds of jurisdiction. One over the person. Is he in front of you? Yeah, okay. But do you have jurisdiction in this territory? All nations have territories. You got to be a court that has jurisdiction over the territory to be able to convict somebody. What is the basis of the United States claim that they have jurisdiction over Hawaii? There's no treaty, right? There's no treaty. We've proven that. I proved it in court. I held up how do you prove something doesn't exist? Hard, yeah. Like, he doesn't exist. Oh, let me get all his friends. No, that won't work. I find a book. Treaty failed. The treaty failed. The treaty failed because the United States itself didn't ratify it. Why? Because of the Kuwait petitions. So what did they do? They wrote their own letter to us and said, "You wanting to marry me, become my wife." There it is, right in paper. The wife says, "I never said that." I know, but I say you said that. And that has worked. That has worked for 120 years. It's fooled the Hawaiian people. One piece of paper from Washington says, "You my wife." Can you imagine that? We believe that. I believed it. I asked fourth grade, how do we ever become part of the United States? My fourth grade teacher said, "We were annexed." I said, "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but we were annexed." Treaty requires two. Everything in America that was added has been added by treaty. Exception, Hawaii. But the truth is, it never got added. And you know what the proof is? The proof lies in the Admissions Act and the state constitution. If you look at the Admissions Act, the definition of the territorial boundaries of the state, it doesn't include the islands. Why? Okay, I'll go through it very, very slowly. They put a lot of little confusing things around to hide it. That's why we were deceived for 120 years. What they say is, what's in the state was in the territory of Hawaii. And you go back to 1900, what was in the territory of Hawaii, there's a section that says, this is what's in the territory of Hawaii. All the islands that were acquired by a joint resolution. So there's nothing in the territory of Hawaii, there's nothing in the state of Hawaii, and that's what I told the judge on Thursday. And you know what she asked me? "You don't think the state exists?" I said, "I work for the state." I said, "I work for the state, but it's a very small state." Because there's nothing in it. You know, you can have like Uber, big company, no cars. You can do it that way. That's what they've been doing. I can prove in court beyond a doubt that the joint resolution had no power to acquire the Hawaiian Islands. The prosecutor simply said, "How about the Kaulia case?" And I said, "Oh, I like the Kaulia case because the guy was convicted, but the court said he was within the territory of Hawaii, so he is guilty." I said, where do you get the definition of the territory? I pull it out again and I say, what? The prosecutor has the burden of proving beyond the reasonable doubt. You've heard that before. What is the beyond a reasonable doubt? You have any doubts at all, you gotta quit. There's not only tons of doubt, there's nothing in proves that a resolution can acquire anything. If the United States can acquire Hawaii, Hawaii can acquire the United States. They should have done that. So that idea doesn't make sense. Here's the kicker. There's an official historian of the United States. He's in the State Department. He had a website. And he puts on all the information about the history of the United States. When it came to Hawaii, he put down, oh, Hawaii was annexed by joint resolution. You can go to their website today and they say, oh, we withdrew it and we're working on it. But, you know, there's a program you can use to go back and find what they really said. They really said that. In 1988, a lawyer for the Justice Department wrote a memo on whether the United States could expand the territorial seas. And he looked at Hawaii as a possible example. He studied it and he said, I cannot figure out how we acquired Hawaii. Now, if the government cannot figure out how they acquired Hawaii, that's really bad because that's their job. So, the judge, we started small. All great things start small. We started in Waimea, which is small. Waimea Courthouse. The lowest kind of criminal penalty was misdemeanor, obstruction, $100. But we can make the most powerful arguments in the lowest of courts because it's like a match. A little fire can start a prairie fire. And that's what will happen. The judge said, okay, I've heard you. She had nothing to say, but you lose. And I said, I was so tempted to do this, but once I got sanctioned for this, which means you get penalized, $75,000 for saying the same thing 20 years ago. That means we've changed. I was going to ask her, so where's your map of Hawaii? What is your definition of Hawaii? You see, the reason there's no definition of Hawaii is there never was a treaty. You go to Sports Authority, you buy something, they write them down. You got one sleeping bag, one pillow, and one beach chair. Right? So you go back, you know what you're getting. When I say, you are my wife, I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know your measurements and all that stuff. So I have no way of describing you. In other words, the joint resolution was written by one side, never ratified by the people of Hawaii. In fact, rejected by Dole and those people. They didn't want the joint resolution. That's a story that's not told. But here's the future. The future is we got a bigger bomb than they do. Our bomb is they cannot prove that they have jurisdiction. But it blows up everything. So we got to be careful. And like it blows up Social Security, it blows up everything. So our point is we're going to be very nice. We're going to show them our hand. See, right now they think we got 2 jacks. We got 4 kings. We're going to show them the 4 kings, and we go, okay, let's settle this. Okay, we divide up Hawaii. You get Honolulu, we get the 2nd congressional district. Waianae becomes a nation. You know why? Because we like the Social Security and stuff. Okay, finally, the last thing that made me really mad about this whole event was I was one of those that was trying to plan a shadow conference where astronomers could meet with the protectors, and it just blew apart. The astronomers didn't want to meet OHA. They reneged on the funding. They said, well, we'll give you 10,000. Oh, those guys are terrible. 10,000 to them is nothing. And now Putin is spending $4 million just to have a meeting with the astronomers. The astronomers are very antsy. And I was the one who wrote a little article in Facebook that said, did Did you know that there's going to be 2,700 astronomers at the International Astronomical Union Third General Assembly in Hawaii on August 3rd to August 14th? Nobody knew that. The state didn't want to tell us. You know what the state does? That's the worst possible thing. Why do people come to Hawaii? Because of Hawaii's aloha, its people, its beauty. They like the hula. Tomorrow, the astronomers are going to go have a luau. And they're going to have hula dancing, and nobody's going to say anything about Mauna Kea. In other words, they use us. They use our culture, they use our land, they bring us here, and then they hide what we really care about. How can you do that? What is a more greater indignity in treating the people that David Ige calls the host culture? They don't exist. They don't have opinions. He hasn't been to Waianae or Nanaguli. That's the key. So this whole convention thing is so upsetting to me because they don't even acknowledge Hawaiians exist. They won't allow us to have one session in the 11-day meeting. They come here, they use the conventions, and you know what the Hawaii Tourist Authority did? They set up excursions. On the side, you know, you go convention, you get excursions. You go to Texas, you get barbecue, you know. One of the excursions was, $1,500 trip to the Big Island, stay at Waikoloa, and you go up to Mauna Kea, and at Imiloa Center, there's going to be pupu, Hawaiian pupus, and beer. Can you imagine something so more insulting than to bring astronomers here, hide the protesters, which is what they're trying to do with the emergency rules, and then bring them up to Mauna Kea as if we didn't exist? We don't exist in their eyes. And that's got to all change. And that has got to all change. And that's why this one is as important as the overthrow and the annexation. So mahalo for your time, and thank you very much.
So let's move on to question and answer. Yes? Okay.
Sitting here, because I'm not too aware, because I've been kind of busy, everybody's busy working, trying to make living, all the above. But I'm born and raised here. My sister lives in Waianae. I've actually lived on the Big Island for 27 years. My look at Mauna Kea, my whole kitchen looks at Mauna Kea. However, as time has progressed, we have seen so much destruction and change to all the islands, to all of the islands, not only to our island, the Big Island, or even here. And I look at it when, I know it takes a lot of lahos to actually stand here, when the majority of us are pretty much, of course, for Mauna Kea to protect the rights and the love and the beauty that Mauna Kea actually is, because it's a part of each and every one of us as our culture. But when you put onto this board and you kind of noted all of these pluses onto it, and I'm not sure if you put it together or not, when you went into the different levels and you had the stratosphere, the thermosphere is the highest one, and the reason why you would love to get to that, but it was so expensive to build up there so you would have clarity to look out there, because that would be kind of like the zenith of what your intention or what you folks all do up there, is that it costs money. It basically costs money. But when you did one about Hawaii or at Mauna Kea on the pluses, you never actually put the biggest why it's up there is because it costs you $1 to rent our Mauna Kea. And at the loss of much, not only education, but health benefits for us as Hawaiians, cultural, I mean, all the things that we work so hard, some of us work 2-3 jobs just to make a living in this world, you didn't put it up. And then you also had that there were many places that was exiled, that you just left because of maybe war, like Iran that was on there, and other places. But the structure is still there. You didn't even malama the land or clean up the land that was there. So if we as Hawaiians get together, we all should fight for our rights to protect Mauna Kea. All of that, and you said that if it's open for one nationality, it should be open for all. So that means every single country, if they had the money to have it, could actually build up there as long as they have the permit to actually keep on expanding. Why isn't it that there's one telescope, and that all you folks share from all the countries share one telescope and bring all your genius plans, your mana, your thought process, how you guys learn together as one collaboration and only have one? Hawaiians would be okay with that, but not to build it in the zenith and destroy our land. But you never ever even said the reason why, and the biggest thing is because we don't charge you $1 billion a year to actually stay in our land, and we don't even collect it from our state because OHA never got the money that the state owes us anyway for a lot of the things. So there is I'm just amazed of how much we as Hawaiians have to do to progress in the way, because government forces us to pay more taxes, to work harder, to support, while you folks are spending billions of dollars out of space, constantly looking at space, and we're trying to live in our land that we actually believe is so sacred to us. And you don't even take the time to do a study of, before going on any property, the land, the people, the culture, at all. So go to Chile, because Chile is open. So go there, and we will be so happy that you actually listen to us.
Thank you. Very good points. And keep in mind, first of all, I'm a teacher. I'm not a practicing astronomer. So I don't get to go up there and use the telescopes. What I do is take the data and the papers they publish and share it with my students. So in that sense, I'm guilty of being associated with it. But I do agree with points made here. And keep in mind what I said in support, if. And it doesn't seem that the if is going to happen, in terms of environmental issues and cultural concern and so forth. But I do agree. If you look back, we've really screwed up the whole process and not been responsible. I don't know how the state and UH got away with $1 deals and stuff. That doesn't make sense to me either. And so the promise that the TMT is saying, how do you enforce that if that was to be the case? Okay. There's many points you made. The one telescope, honestly, if there was no concern about Mauna Kea, there would probably be many more telescopes up there. And what it comes down to is space is big, and each instrument has different objectives, what they can measure. And even with all the telescopes on the Earth, we can only see portions of the sky at one time. So it's kind of hard to do with one instrument. But in terms of how many you have, that's an important point. If somebody was promised initially, say we're going to build 1 or 2, and then all of a sudden you got 5 or 6, something's not right there, and that's a management issue. I do agree very strongly that with the International Astronomical Union here, there should be discussion. I think, based on my conversations with people, many of the astronomers that are not from Hawaii don't know, and they are being blocked, and they are being, there is a shield to prevent them from knowing. And that's why in my suggestion, there's got to be more interaction, more interface. What's there now? Whatever happens in the future, and I don't know. Eventually, all the telescopes will be gone. Whatever they do. Right now, there should be this interaction between the astronomers and the culture that I don't think exists. And this meeting that's going on would be an ideal place. So I don't know why that's all being covered up, except for what was stated. That maybe there's.
So you didn't draft that.
I made the PowerPoint. I'm just presenting facts. as I mentioned, I've been to Mauna Kea, and it's a special place. I felt something very important when I was there. I was just on the mainland. My daughter got married, and I went up to the Rocky, the Colorado Rocky National Park, Rocky Mountain National Park, and I was on the mountain, but it felt different. And it still felt like a special place, but not the same. And so, this idea of experiencing versus kind of blocking, I think, is something significant. So, it's not that I'm pro TMT in Hawaii. I think it's an instrument that should be built because it'll enhance our knowledge, but it does have the ability to be built elsewhere, and that's the original proposal. And if you can't meet the requirements, and I put out 3 possibilities, then it shouldn't be built here. Okay, and that's my position. Okay.
Yeah, let's remember that he's a wildlife teacher. He's not an astronomer. So he takes the burden of taking those things, but he's part of the community. Yes, Aunty.
I have a question for Williamson. I'm mostly interested at this point in the legal aspects of where the case is that's before the Supreme Court and Hawaii Supreme Court and the parallels to Haleakala.
Okay, let me admit that I don't know the answer as parallels to Haleakala. The case that's being made in the Hawaii Supreme Court on behalf of Mauna Kea is not, in my mind, the strongest case possible. They are arguing that the 8 criteria were not satisfied. We've heard that. I would argue that the state doesn't have any jurisdiction over Mauna Kea. I would drop the bomb, and that would apply to Haleakala. How did they? Then I would show them, ask them, where did they get the title to the lands? How do you get title to the lands if there's no conveyance in 1898? The joint resolution not only took the sovereignty of Hawaii by a single paper, it took all the public lands. 1.8 million acres were taken by the United States for nothing. So I would ask 2 questions. Where's your jurisdiction? And show me the title. So I'm saying, I'm a little unhappy with the way the case has been proceeding in the Hawaii Supreme Court. I don't think the Mauna Kea protectors had the resources and money to buy the big-time lawyers that 1.5 billion Chinese money, Indian money, Canadian money, Caltech money, and Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation money has. It's not a fair fight.
I wanted to confirm, since I helped put that case together, indeed we did not have the resources to put together maybe the case that he is talking about. If we can remember back maybe 5 years ago when this all ball started rolling, it wasn't a gang of folks coming out, just put it that way. And I don't blame people for that because there's a lot of stuff going on constantly and you cannot be at everything. So I can tell you at that point, the crowds at the hearings are pretty thin. And sorry, it's kind of a little bit off track, but one of the tricky things that UH has been doing, or one of the weird things, is that on all of these applications, TMT is not the applicant. UH is the applicant. So let's all just let that sink in for a minute, because that means that's public money. It's our money using to fund their case, their lawyers, the permitting process, all of that. They've spent over $4 million just on TMT. Our guys, like, quite literally sleeping in their car in Hilo because it's too far to drive back to Waimea for the court hearing the next day. Us flying from Oahu, trying to scrape Hawaiian miles from people who can donate it to us, having to go on the plane, seeing the UH attorney sitting in first class, knowing that we're paying for that is totally sickening. So indeed, the resources were not, on par. I did want to say, in terms of the parallels to Haleakala, both of the cases are focused on those 8 criteria. There are some other issues that they bring up. The other thing that they bring up is, or is parallel in both of them, is the contested case hearing, the order it happened in. So that's like it's kind of boring, but it's an administrative appeal that when BLNR is hearing something, people can say, I want a contested case hearing, which basically says it's going to give more time to bring expert witnesses in to give the BLNR more information to make a good decision. And it's supposed to happen in that order. But what's been happening is BLNR will make the decision, then the contested case happens, and then the hearing officer basically has to tell BLNR you made a good decision or bad decision. Very seldom do they say bad decision, and even when they say bad decision, BLNR can say, thanks for your comment, we're gonna go ahead with our decision anyway. So I believe there was already a ruling that that's not supposed to happen like that on Haleakala. Yeah, that is also what happened in TMT. That was raised, the thing is still moving forward. So there's definitely clear, it's not that the arguments haven't been made, it's just, anyway, it's rolling forward. The next hearing for the Supreme Court for the TMT one is on August 27th, 8:45 in the morning, and it's open to the public if people wanna attend.
I think you work for the University of Hawaii, don't you? I work for the University of Hawaii.
I do not.
She does not. But imagine I have to work for the University of Hawaii and they're doing this. They call themselves a Hawaiian place of learning. They have criteria that every student has to take a Hawaiian Asian class. And yet they're doing this. And they're doing many things around the state. GMO, patenting taro, fracking. What's going on here? This is like, it's a cold contradiction. I work at the law school named after William S. Richardson I, Native Hawaiian Chief Justice that after state owned, and yet the law school's address is Dole Street. I've had to put that down for 40 years. How would you like if you worked on Jefferson Davis Boulevard? And we got a dorm called Freer Dorm. There's something not right. I want to say one more thing about the legal side. Why is Mauna Kea considered conservation land? Mauna Loa, Kilauea were made national parks in 1916. They're now on the UNESCO World List of Heritage Sites. Papahānaumokuākea was put on the World List really quickly by George Bush because Laura Bush, she fainted when she saw a bird stuck in the kind of plastic. And so he said, oh, don't worry, honey, I'm going to work on it. And so that you cannot touch those areas. What's the difference between Mauna Kea? Mauna Kea is being treated like it's like a piece of earth where they can have gentlemen farms and exceptions. Why is it Mauna Kea on the World Heritage Site list? Why are we giving it such a low standard? So the question starts with the framing of the legal issue. We didn't this state and this country, when it made Mauna Loa and Kilauea national parks in 1916, had no idea of the importance of Mauna Kea in the Kumilipo and how Mauna Kea relates to Papahānaumokuākea. We know that, but they didn't take the time to study and learn and honor the host culture.
What about the teacher? What happened to Hubble? Why isn't that important? Maybe everybody knows this except me. But I'd like to know.
It's still important. It's getting very close to the end of its lifespan. So we no longer have a space shuttle, so we can't service it, which is, you put things out in space, you have to service them. So it's still there, and it's still taking pictures, but